Over 124,000 prophets.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just think about that number for a second.
Yeah.
Islamic tradition said that's how many were sent, across the whole world.
It's almost unbelievable when you first hear it.
It really is. So when you pause and really consider that scale, what does that huge volume of messengers tell us about divine guidance itself?
Well, it immediately suggests a really profound ongoing commitment, doesn't it? It wasn't just like a few isolated events. It seems more like a continuous thread woven right through human history across all sorts of different people.
Exponentially more than many other traditions recognize.
Exactly. Which kind of raises the question, what unique understanding of the human-divine relationship might this imply within Islam,
And yet, here's the really interesting flip side. From that, immense number, only 25 prophets are actually named in the Quran.
Right.
Why just those 25? What makes them stand out? Is there like a common thread in their stories that gives us special insights?
That's the key question, I think. While acknowledging this vast history of divine communication, the Quran's focus on these specific individuals, well, it likely serves to highlight really foundational principles.
Pivotal stories.
Or pivotal stories, yes. Narratives that just carry enduring relevance for humanity, regardless of time or place. It kind of invites us to look closer at what makes their experiences so instructive.
Okay, so in this deep dive, that's what we're going to explore, this whole fascinating concept of prophethood in Islam.
Mm-hmm.
We'll delve into the significance of that huge number, over 124,000, and try to unpack the core message that, apparently unified all their missions.
And our sources really emphasize this global reach, don't they? The consistent message underneath and also the different ways people responded.
Right. So let's unpack this staggering number first, over 124,000 prophets. It's truly a global idea when you think about it that way.
It really is. And when you contemplate that figure, the immediate takeaway is, it's a truly widespread, persistent effort to engage with humanity, to guide us.
It paints a picture of divine outreach that's maybe far more extensive than many people readily imagine.
Definitely. And considering the sheer diversity of human experience throughout history, this suggests maybe a divine understanding of our varied needs and a commitment to offer guidance in, lots of different ways.
It almost sounds like a very tailored approach, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If you have that many messengers sent to all these different communities, it kind of implies the guidance was specific somehow, relevant to their unique situations.
That's a really crucial observation. The idea that each community might have had its own prophet points towards, our source calls it a personalized approach to spirituality and morality.
Personalized.
Yeah. It encourages us to think that maybe different cultures received guidance framed in ways that were most accessible, most meaningful to them.
That perspective could really change how we view the variety of faith traditions globally.
Absolutely. And our sources are specific. They mention prophets being sent to various regions, Africa, the Americas, Asia, Europe.
It really drives home the global scale. It wasn't just, confined to one corner of the world.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It highlights this universal human need for guidance and the divine response reaching everywhere.
Okay. Now, let's shift focus a bit. Let's turn to that smaller group, the 25 prophets actually mentioned by name in the Quran.
Right.
What can we infer from their specific highlighting?
Well, as we sort of touched on, this specific selection seems to really emphasize their universal principles and impactful stories.
Okay.
These are narratives that offer deep lessons about, faith, resilience against huge challenges, and enduring moral strength. They act as key examples.
And these are figures familiar across different Abrahamic faiths too, right? People like Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus.
Exactly. And Muhammad, of course, peace be upon them all. While that list isn't all 25 mentioned, it certainly includes these pivotal figures whose stories, whose teachings have profoundly shaped history.
Still inspiring people today.
Immensely. It makes you wonder, are there common themes that link these specific individuals? Maybe certain types of challenges they all faced?
That's a real interesting angle.
Yeah.
Does their inclusion point to particular lessons about, recurring struggles in the human journey?
Could be.
And here's where it gets, I think, really fascinating. Despite this huge number of messengers, diverse contexts, our source stresses this fundamental, consistent message.
Yes.
What was that core truth, the one they all carried?
The absolute foundation, consistently, was the oneness of Allah, the single, unique God.
Tawheed.
Exactly. And alongside that, the paramount importance of living a life guided by good deeds. ethical, moral conduct.
So across different times, different cultures, different languages, this central idea just remained constant.
Unchanged.
What does that consistency suggest about maybe the nature of truth itself?
Right.
Or morality?
Well, it strongly suggests that at the core of existence, there are fundamental truths that are timeless, universal. And that consistency can be deeply meaningful for people seeking a unified spiritual understanding, a sense that despite all the apparent diversity in religious expression, there's a core truth connecting it all.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, okay, the core message was consistent, but the way it was delivered seems to have been, well, remarkably tuned to the specific cultural context.
Absolutely. Our source really emphasizes that prophets communicated with their people in their own languages.
Right.
Which underscores the critical significance of cultural relevancy when you're trying to convey spiritual truths effectively.
Just think about that. The divine message wasn't imposed in some alien way.
No.
It was spoken in the very language within the cultural understanding of the people being addressed.
Which naturally would have made the guidance far more accessible, more relatable.
Fostering a deeper understanding.
Exactly. A better connection to the message when it resonates with their worldview, their ways of communicating.
Okay, but not everyone listened, did they?
No.
Our source points out there was a whole spectrum of responses.
Indeed. The missions of the prophets, they didn't always lead to universal acceptance. Far from it, sometimes.
So some nations were guided, things went well.
And others, well, sadly, they faced pretty severe consequences for rejecting the truth they were shown.
And this brings in that concept of free will, doesn't it?
Directly. Very directly. The understanding that humans have the agency, the choice, whether to accept or reject divine guidance. These varying outcomes really underscore how significant that choice is. The far-reaching consequences of either embracing or denying the message
is not passive.
Not at all. It demands active engagement, a conscious decision.
Our source also mentions this invitation to travel through the land and reflect on what happened to those who denied the truth.
Yes, that's a powerful part of it.
What's the purpose behind that? Encouraging historical reflection.
It serves as a really potent way to learn from the past. By looking at the paths different civilizations took, considering their spiritual journeys, we can gain invaluable insights.
Insights into what?
Into the consequences of choices, the importance of heeding guidance. It pushes for a critical look at history, not just facts and dates, but the underlying lessons.
So it's not just history for history's sake. It's about drawing parallels, understanding the principles.
Exactly right. It prompts you, the listener, to consider, what can we actually learn from these accounts? How might the patterns of the past shape our choices now and in the future?
Which brings us to the final point in our main section. This concluding call to consideration.
Powerful one.
Reiterating the warning, basically. Reflect on the consequences of rejecting the prophet's messages.
This final message really underscores the urgency and gravity that surrounds communicating spiritual truths.
It stresses the importance of taking these messages seriously, adhering to divine guidance.
And crucially, not just out of fear, but from understanding the profound impact these choices have on our lives, our ultimate destinies.
And that invitation to look at history acts as a constant reminder, doesn't it, of how these choices play out again and again.
It does, a cyclical reminder.
Okay, so let's try and bring this all together as we wrap up. We started with that, well, truly astonishing figure, over 124,000 prophets, underscoring this widespread, persistent divine interest in guiding humanity. Tailored, it seems, to diverse communities all over the world.
Then we narrowed the focus to the 25 prophets named in the Quran.
Right, recognizing their stories, the universal principles they embody, hold particular weight for understanding faith and morality.
And we learned that despite all the differences in time and culture, the core message was incredibly consistent.
Worship one God, do good deeds. Simple, yet profound.
Communicated in culturally relevant ways in people's own languages.
But ultimately, humanity responded differently, which highlights free will and the consequences of our choices regarding these messages.
And finally, that call to learn from history, a continuous opportunity for reflection.
So this deep dive into prophethood, it kind of leaves us with one last, maybe even more profound question for you, the listener, to think about. If so many messengers were truly sent across all that time, all those cultures, carrying such a similar core message, what might that suggest? Fundamentally, about our innate spiritual needs as humans, about our ultimate purpose.
It's definitely something worth pondering further, a concept that invites continued exploration.